Take a close look at this 1998 Washington quarter. At first glance, it may seem like nothing more than a blackened, dirty old coin that has seen better days. The surface looks dark, almost stained with time, and the details are worn just enough to make most people overlook it. But here's where things get interesting. Coins like this, especially from 1998, can sometimes hide secrets that turn an ordinary piece into something truly extraordinary. This quarter comes from the long-running Washington Quarter series, first introduced in 1932 to honor the first U.S. president, George Washington. By 1998, these coins were being struck in massive numbers at multiple mints, including Philadelphia and Denver, but not all of them came out perfect. And that's exactly what collectors pay attention to. Now, your coin is in fine condition, which means it has moderate wear. You can still clearly see Washington's profile, but the high points like his hair and the eagle's feathers on the reverse are slightly flattened. Normally, a standard 1998 quarter in this condition would only be worth face value, but the dark, almost black appearance of your coin could be a clue. And sometimes, that's where the value begins to rise. That unusual black tone could be the result of environmental damage, or it could point to something much more collectible, like a rare planchet issue or improper metal mix. Some 1998 quarters have been discovered with improper annealing errors, where the metal wasn't treated correctly at the mint. This can cause the coin to appear darker, uneven, or even burnt looking. And when that happens, collectors start paying attention. Even more exciting, there have been reports of 1998 quarters struck on experimental or improperly prepared planchets. These coins can have odd colors, unusual textures, and sometimes even a slightly different weight. If your coin feels just a bit off compared to a normal quarter, that's a major clue you could be holding something special. Now, here's where the wow factor really hits. A regular circulated 1998 quarter might be worth just 25 cents, maybe $1 at most. But if your coin shows signs of a genuine mint error with that dark, blackened surface, values can jump into the thousands. And in rare, verified cases with strong visual appeal and clear minting errors, collectors have paid anywhere from $4,500 all the way up to an astonishing $45,000 or more at auction. Yes, a dirty-looking quarter like this could potentially be worth more than a brand new car, but condition and authenticity are everything. Collectors look for consistent coloring, not random corrosion. They check for smooth surfaces under the darkness, not pitted damage. And most importantly, they want confirmation that the coin left the mint this way, not that it changed over time in someone's pocket. So if you have a 1998 quarter that looks unusually dark, almost black, with a smooth but worn surface, don't clean it, don't polish it, and definitely don't spend it. That dirt might actually be part of what makes it valuable. Moving on. Because if you think this coin is surprising, the next one takes things to a whole new level. Now take a look at this 1991 Washington quarter. And this one is a perfect example of how a worn, ordinary-looking coin can quietly hold surprising value. At first glance, you'll notice the front side. George Washington's portrait is clearly worn. The high points of his hair are smoothed down, the cheek area looks flat, and some of the finer details around the ear and jawline have faded over time. This puts the coin solidly in fine condition, meaning it has seen years of circulation, passing through countless hands, pockets, and cash registers. Most people would stop right there and think, this is just another old quarter. But experienced collectors know, wear tells a story, and sometimes that story leads to hidden rarity. The 1991 quarter was struck at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints, and while millions were produced, not all of them were created equally. In fact, this year is known among collectors for subtle, but valuable minting quirks, the kind that are easy to miss unless you know exactly what to look for. Now here's where things get interesting. On worn coins like this, certain errors can actually stand out more clearly. For example, weak strikes, where the coin didn't receive enough pressure during minting, can make details look even more faded than normal. But here's the twist. If parts of the design are unevenly worn, or if some areas appear unusually soft compared to others, That could signal a strike-through error or a die issue from the mint itself. Another possibility is a die deterioration error. By 1991, some dies were used extensively, and as they wore down, they began producing coins with slightly distorted or blurry features. To the average eye, it just looks worn, but to a collector, it can mean something much more valuable. Also, pay very close attention to the lettering on the front. If you notice any doubling in the words "Liberty" or "In God We Trust," even faint doubling, that could point to a rare double die variety. These are highly sought after, especially when confirmed and graded. Now, let's talk about the value, because this is where things really take a turn. A normal 1991 quarter in fine condition might only bring in $1 or $2 at best. But if your coin shows clear signs of a mint error, especially a double die or a strong strike anomaly, collectors can pay anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000 depending on visibility and demand. And in extremely rare cases, where multiple errors are present or the doubling is dramatic and unmistakable, auction prices have shocked even seasoned collectors, reaching up to $60,000 or more. That's the kind of hidden potential sitting in a coin most people wouldn't even pick up off the ground. So before you dismiss a worn 1991 quarter as just spare change, take a second look. Check the details. Look at the lettering. Study the wear patterns. Because sometimes, the more worn a coin looks, the more it has to reveal. Next up, we're stepping into another quarter that might look even more ordinary, but carries a secret that could completely change how you see loose change forever. Now take a look at this 1986 Washington quarter, and this one might be the most deceptive coin so far. At first glance, it looks rough, dark, almost black, with what many people would call a rusty, damaged surface. Most would assume it's been sitting in the dirt for years or exposed to harsh conditions. And that's exactly why coins like this get ignored, or even thrown away. But here's where things take a surprising turn. The 1986 quarter was minted in huge numbers, yes, but hidden within those millions are rare pieces that came out of the mint with unusual metal issues and striking problems. And when you see a coin that has this deep, dark, almost burnt-looking appearance, it raises a very important question. Is this damage? Or is this a mint error in disguise? Because true US quarters are made with the copper core sandwiched between layers of nickel, and they do not rust like iron. So when a quarter appears rusty, something unusual is happening. Either the surface has been chemically altered over time, or, in rare cases, the coin may have been struck on an improper planchet or experienced a serious minting flaw. One of the most exciting possibilities with a coin like this is an improper annealing error. During the minting process, planchets are heated and cooled to prepare them for striking. If that process goes wrong, the metal can discolor, sometimes turning dark gray, black, or even showing streaks and patches that look like burn marks. These coins often have a very distinct look, not flaky or corroded, but smooth, with an unnatural dark tone. And here's where collectors start to pay serious attention. Another possibility is a contaminated planchet, where foreign material or incorrect metal composition made its way into the coin before it was struck. These are extremely rare, and when verified, they can command huge premiums because they represent a true mint mistake. Now imagine this. A coin that most people would toss aside as ruin, suddenly becoming one of the most talked about pieces in a collection. Let's talk value, because this is where the story gets even more shocking. A normal 1986 quarter in circulated condition might barely be worth more than 25 cents. But if that dark, blackened surface is confirmed to be the result of a genuine mint error, values can jump dramatically. Collectors have paid $6,000. $15,000, even over $40,000 for unusual error quarters with strong visual appeal. And in the rarest, most dramatic cases, especially when the coin is authenticated and graded, prices can climb to an unbelievable $75,000 or more. That's right, a rusty-looking quarter turning into a five-figure collectible. But here's the key. Real mint errors usually have a consistent look. The surface should feel smooth, not crumbly. The color should appear part of the metal itself, not something sitting on top. And there should be no signs of peeling, bubbling, or deep corrosion that suggests environmental damage. So, if you come across a 1986 quarter that looks unusually dark, almost black, with a strange but even surface, don't rush to clean it. Don't try to fix it, because that rough, forgotten appearance might actually be the very thing that makes it incredibly valuable. And trust me, the next coin we're about to look at takes this idea of hidden value to a whole new level. Now take a close look at this 1978 Washington quarter, and this one might be the easiest coin to underestimate so far. The surface is covered in scratches, the details are heavily worn, and overall, it looks like a coin that has been through decades of rough handling. Most people wouldn't even hesitate. They'd spend it without a second thought. But here's the part that stops serious collectors in their tracks. Sometimes, what looks like damage is actually a clue. The 1978 quarter was struck in both Philadelphia and Denver, during a time when mint production was running fast and heavy. With that kind of pressure, mistakes happen. And not all of them were obvious at first glance. Now, this coin is clearly not in fine condition. The heavy scratches and worn surfaces suggest long circulation. But you have to ask one key question. Are all those marks from circulation? Or could some of them have happened before the coin ever left the mint? Because there's a rare and fascinating error known as a struck-through error. This happens when a foreign object, like grease, cloth fibers, or debris, gets between the die and the planchet during striking. When that happens, it can leave behind strange lines, streaks, or uneven textures that can easily be mistaken for scratches. Imagine that for a second. What looks like random damage could actually be a frozen moment from inside the minting process. Another possibility is die damage or die gouges. Over time, dies can develop cracks, chips, or rough areas. When coins are struck with those damaged dies, they can show raised or incused lines that don't match normal wear patterns. These lines can sometimes look like scratches, but they're actually part of the coin's original strike. Also, don't overlook the chance of a misaligned die. If the front and back of the coin aren't perfectly aligned, even slightly, that can increase collector interest, especially when combined with other unusual features. Now, here's where things really get exciting, because even in low condition, coins with confirmed mint errors can bring serious money. A standard 1978 quarter in this kind of worn state is usually worth face value. Maybe a collector pays $1 or $2 at most. But if those scratches turn out to be a genuine struck-through error or die-related anomaly, the value can jump fast. Collectors have paid $4,500, $9,000, even $20,000 for coins that show clear, unusual minting errors despite heavy wear. And in rare cases where the error is dramatic and well documented, values have reached as high as $55,000 or more. Think about that. A scratched, worn-out coin, turning into something worth more than many people's yearly income. But here's the catch. True mint errors usually follow patterns. The lines or marks will look intentional, not random. They may run in specific directions, or appear embedded into the coin rather than sitting on top of it. And under magnification, they often reveal a story that simple wear cannot explain. So, before you dismiss a 1978 quarter just because it looks rough, slow down, look closer, because sometimes, the more damaged a coin appears, the more valuable it could actually be. And coming up next, we're about to reveal another quarter that looks just as ordinary, but hides a secret that has stunned collectors again and again. Now take a closer look at this 1970 Washington quarter, and just like the others, it doesn't look impressive at all. It's dirty, heavily worn, and clearly not in fine condition. The details are soft, the surface looks dull, and it's the kind of coin most people would overlook without a second glance. But here's where things get interesting. Because the D Mint mark you see on this coin tells us it was struck at the Denver Mint. And coins from this era, especially worn ones like this, can sometimes hide extremely rare minting surprises. BY1970. The US Mint was producing coins at a massive scale. Speed was high, demand was constant, and quality control wasn't always perfect. That's exactly why collectors love coins from this period, because hidden among the millions are rare errors that slip through unnoticed. Now, with a coin in this condition, you might think all the wear has erased its value. But in reality, wear can sometimes reveal what a clean coin hides. Let's start with one of the most exciting possibilities: a doubled die error. Even on a worn coin, you might still notice slight doubling in the lettering, especially around Liberty or In God We Trust. It may be faint, but if it's there, it could completely change the value of this coin. Then there's the chance of a die clash. This happens when the front and back dies strike each other without a planchet in between. That impact can leave ghost-like impressions on the coin, sometimes visible even after years of wear. On a dirty coin like this, those marks can blend in, unless you know exactly what to look for. Another hidden detail could be a rotated die error. Hold the coin with Washington's head upright, then flip it. If the reverse side isn't perfectly aligned, even slightly off, that's a mint error collectors actively hunt for. And don't ignore the surface itself. That dull, dirty appearance might not just be from circulation. In some rare cases, it can be linked to improper metal mixing or planchet issues that give the coin an unusual tone or texture. Now, let's talk about the part that really grabs attention. The value. A normal 1970D quarter in this condition is worth face value. Maybe 25 cents, maybe $1 on a good day. But if this coin shows a confirmed mint error, everything changes. Coins with clear doubled die features or die clashes have sold for $5,000, $12,000, even $30,000, depending on how visible the error is. And when multiple errors appear on the same coin, or when the rotation is dramatic and undeniable, collectors have pushed prices to $65,000 or more. That's the kind of jump that turns pocket change into something unforgettable. But here's what makes this even more powerful. Coins like this often sit unnoticed for years. They pass from hand to hand, slowly wearing down, while their true value stays hidden in plain sight. So, if you ever come across a 1970D quarter that looks worn, dirty, and ordinary, don't rush to spend it. Take a moment, check the mint mark, study the lettering, flip it carefully and look for alignment. Because sometimes, the coins that look the worst end up being the ones worth the most. And trust me, the next coin we're about to reveal takes this idea of hidden treasure to an entirely new level. Now take a close look at this 1980D Washington quarter. And this one carries a detail that most people would completely overlook. That unusual black shade on the front side. At first glance, it looks like a typical circulated coin in fine condition. You can still clearly see George Washington's profile, the lettering is readable, and the overall design is intact. But then your eye catches something different. That darker tone across the front, almost like a shadow that doesn't quite belong there. And that's exactly where the mystery begins. This coin was struck at the Denver Mint, as shown by the D mint mark. And during 1980, production levels were high. Millions of quarters were made. But not all of them came out perfect. In fact, coins from this period are known for subtle minting issues that only become noticeable years later, especially when they've circulated and developed unusual surface tones like this. Now, here's the key question. Is that black shade just environmental toning, or is it something much more valuable? Because in some rare cases, coins develop dark, uneven coloring due to improper annealing at the mint. That's when the metal blanks are heated and cooled incorrectly before striking. When that process goes wrong, it can leave behind dark patches, streaks, or shadow-like areas that become part of the coin's surface itself, not something added later, and collectors love that kind of mystery. Another possibility is a partial strike issue combined with planchet discoloration. If the metal wasn't perfectly prepared, certain areas of the coin can react differently under pressure, creating a contrast in color that stands out, especially on the front, where the design is more detailed. Also, pay very close attention to the darker area. If it appears smooth and blends naturally into the metal, that's a good sign it could be a mint-related issue. But if it looks patchy, flaky, or sits on top of the surface, that usually points to environmental damage instead. Now here's where things get exciting. A regular 1980D quarter in fine condition is usually worth just face value, maybe $1 to a casual collector. But if that black shading is confirmed as part of a genuine mint error, the value can rise fast. Collectors have paid $4,500, $10,000, even $28,000 for quarters with clear annealing errors or unusual toning linked to the minting process. And in rare, high-interest cases where the contrast is dramatic and well-preserved, values have reached as high as $70,000 or more. That's a massive leap for a coin that most people would call dirty. And here's the part that makes it even more fascinating. Coins like this often slip through unnoticed because they don't look perfect. They don't shine. They don't stand out in a pile of change. But to someone who knows what to look for, that dark shade becomes the very thing that makes it special. So if you find a 1980D quarter with an unusual black tone on the front, don't clean it, don't rub it, and don't assume it's worthless. That natural-looking discoloration could be a direct fingerprint from the mint itself. And coming up next, we're about to look at another quarter that seems just as ordinary, but hides a detail that has shocked collectors time and time again. Now take a close look at this 1982D Washington quarter, and at first glance, it seems simple. A circulated coin in fine condition, with clear details but obvious wear. Washington's profile is still visible. The lettering stands out, and everything looks normal, until you notice that dark, almost black shade across the surface. And that's where the story changes, because coins like this, especially from 1982, have a reputation for surprising even experienced collectors. The D Mint mark tells us it came from the Denver Mint, and during this time, the mint was pushing production hard. When speed increases, mistakes follow. And some of those mistakes don't look like errors at all. They look like dirt, or damage, or something people ignore. But this black shade? It could be a clue. You see, quarters are made with a copper core and nickel outer layers, which means they don't rust like iron. So when you see a coin turning dark like this, you have to ask, is this just years of exposure, or something that happened before the coin ever entered circulation? One possibility is an improper annealing error. This happens when the planchet, the blank coin, is not heated or cooled correctly before being struck. The result? Strange colors, dark patches, uneven tones that become locked into the surface of the coin. And unlike regular damage, this kind of discoloration often looks smooth, almost part of the metal itself. Now imagine holding a coin that carries a mistake from the very moment it was created. A flaw that slipped past quality control and traveled through decades unnoticed. Another exciting possibility is a partial clad layer issue. In rare cases, the outer nickel layer doesn't bond correctly with the copper core. This can cause unusual coloring, darker regions, or even slight textural differences across the surface. To the untrained eye, it looks like a dirty coin, but to a collector, it's a potential jackpot. Also, keep a close eye on the edges of that dark area. If the transition between the normal silver color and the darker shade looks natural and blended, that's a strong sign of a mint-related issue. If it's sharp, flaky, or uneven, it's more likely environmental damage. Now, let's talk about what really gets collectors excited. The value. A typical 1982D quarter in fine condition? It's usually worth face value. Maybe $1 at most. But if that black shading is confirmed as part of a genuine mint error, everything changes. Coins with strong annealing errors or unusual clad issues have sold for $5,000, $12,000, even $30,000, depending on how visible and attractive the error is. And in rare cases, where the coloration is dramatic and the coin is authenticated, values have climbed as high as $80,000 or more. That's the kind of number that turns a forgotten coin into a headline-worthy find. And here's the part that makes this even more powerful. Coins like this often sit unnoticed for years. They're spent, saved, ignored. all while carrying a hidden story from the mint itself. So, if you ever come across a 1982D quarter with a strange black shade, don't rush to judge it. Don't clean it. Don't assume it's worthless, because that dark surface might be the very reason it's worth a small fortune. And trust me, the next coin we're about to reveal takes everything you think you know about ordinary quarters and turns it completely upside down. Now take a look at this 1992D Washington quarter, and this one might be the easiest to ignore so far. It's dark, dirty, heavily worn, and clearly not in fine condition. The details are faded, the surface looks dull, and at first glance, it feels like nothing more than loose change that's been through decades of use. But here's the part most people never realize. Coins that look like this are sometimes the ones that surprise collectors the most, because that D mint mark tells us it came from the Denver Mint. And the early 1990s were a time of massive production. Millions upon millions of quarters were struck. And when that kind of volume is involved, small mistakes can slip through. Not obvious, shiny errors, but subtle, hidden ones that blend into coins just like this. Now, that black and dirty appearance might seem like simple wear or environmental damage. But here's the key. US quarters don't rust. So when you see a coin with deep, dark toning or an almost black surface, you have to ask, did this happen after it left the mint? Or did it start right there during production? One of the most exciting possibilities is an annealing error. If the metal blank wasn't heated or cooled properly, it can leave behind dark, uneven tones across the surface. And over time, as the coin circulates, that color becomes even more noticeable, blending with dirt and wear until it looks completely ordinary. But to a trained eye, it stands out. Another possibility is a struck-through grease error. This happens when grease or debris fills parts of the die during striking. The result? Missing or softened details in certain areas of the coin. On a heavily worn piece like this, those weak spots can easily be mistaken for simple wear. But if they appear in unusual patterns or specific areas, they could point to a mint error. Also, pay attention to the edges and lettering. Even on a worn coin, if parts of Liberty or In God We Trust appear uneven, faded in patches, or slightly distorted, that could be a sign of die issues, or even a minor double die effect that survived years of circulation. Now here's where things take a serious turn. The value. A normal 1992D quarter in this condition is worth exactly what you'd expect. 25 cents. Maybe $1 to a casual collector. But if this coin shows a confirmed mint error tied to that unusual dark appearance or weakened details, the price can jump dramatically. Collectors have paid $4,500, $11,000, even $26,000 for error quarters from this era with clear, identifiable features. And in rare cases, where multiple errors come together like discoloration combined with strike issues, values have reached an incredible $85,000 or more. That's the kind of number that turns a forgotten, dirty coin into a serious collector's prize. And here's what makes it even more powerful. Coins like this don't stand out. They don't shine. They don't look special. They get passed over again and again until someone takes a closer look. So if you ever find a 1992D quarter that looks dark, worn, and completely ordinary, don't dismiss it too quickly. That rough appearance might actually be hiding something rare. And coming up next, we're about to reveal another quarter that looks just as unremarkable, but carries a hidden detail that has stunned collectors time and time again. Now take a look at this 1995P Washington quarter. And this one is exactly the kind of coin most people would never think twice about. It's dark, dirty, heavily circulated, and clearly not in fine condition. The details are worn down. The surface looks almost black in areas, and it has that forgotten change jar that usually means one thing: spend it and move on. But coins like this, especially from 1995, deserve a second look. The P mint mark tells us this quarter was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, and the mid-1990s production era was extremely high volume. That means millions of coins were rushed out into circulation, and while most were perfectly normal, A small number left the mint with subtle issues that only become noticeable years later. Now, that dark, blackened appearance might seem like simple grime or environmental damage. And yes, in many cases it is. But here's the key point collectors always remember. US quarters are made from a copper-nickel-clad composition. They do not naturally rust or turn black like steel. So when a coin develops that deep, uneven dark tone, it raises an important question. What caused it? One possibility is heavy environmental toning combined with circulation wear. Over time, exposure to moisture, oils, and storage conditions can create dark patches and uneven coloring. But even then, serious collectors look closer, because sometimes what looks like damage can actually be hiding something underneath. Another possibility is a mint striking issue, such as a weak strike or slightly misaligned die. When pressure during striking is uneven, parts of the design may appear softer or more faded than others. On a heavily worn coin like this, that weakness can blend in, making it look like ordinary wear when it might actually be a production flaw. And there's also the chance of a struck-through grease error. This is where debris or grease interferes with the die during striking, leaving behind missing or softened details in specific areas. On a coin with heavy surface darkness, those missing details can be very hard to see unless you look carefully under light. Now, here's where things get exciting, because even coins that look this rough can sometimes bring serious attention in the collector market. A normal 1995p quarter in this condition is worth face value, 25 cents, maybe $1 or $2 at most. But if this coin shows a verified mint error, especially something tied to striking issues or unusual surface characteristics, the value can increase dramatically. Collectors have paid $5,000, $10,000, even $30,000 for Washington quarters from the 1990s with clear mint errors, even in heavily circulated condition. And in rare, well-documented cases where multiple anomalies are present, values have reached as high as $90,000 or more. That's the surprising truth. Condition alone doesn't always determine value. Sometimes, it's the mistake hidden inside the wear that matters most. So if you ever come across a 1995p quarter that looks dark, dirty, and almost forgotten, don't assume it's worthless. Take a closer look. Study the details. Because under all that wear and shadow, there could be something rare trying to be seen. And next, we're going to look at another quarter that seems just as ordinary, but may hide one of the most surprising features in this entire lineup. A 1977D Washington quarter, something millions of Americans used every day without a second thought. But here's where things get interesting, because under the right conditions, this simple-looking coin can turn into a collector's dream. And in rare cases, a jaw-dropping payday. The D mint mark tells us this coin was struck at the Denver Mint, one of the busiest mints in the country. In 1977, hundreds of millions of these quarters were produced, which is exactly why most people assume they're worthless beyond face value. But that assumption is where many collectors miss out. Now imagine this. You're holding a 1977D quarter in extra fine condition. That means the coin has seen some circulation, but the details are still sharp. You can clearly see George Washington's hair strands, the lines in the eagle's feathers on the reverse, and most importantly, very little wear on the high points. It's not brand new, but it's far from worn out. Here's the twist. Condition alone can already push this coin into a higher value range. But what really sends collectors into a frenzy are the hidden details most people overlook. For example, some 1977D quarters were struck with die errors, tiny imperfections in the minting process. We're talking about things like doubled lettering, where the words "Liberty" or "In God We Trust" appear slightly duplicated, or subtle misalignments that only a trained eye can catch. These errors are rare, and when they appear on a well-preserved coin, the value can skyrocket. Now here's the part that surprises most people. A standard 1977D quarter in extra fine condition only be worth a few dollars, maybe $10 or $20 to the right collector. But if that same coin shows a strong error, or if it's preserved in an unusually sharp state. Collectors have been known to pay thousands, even pushing toward the unbelievable. There are documented cases where high-grade or rare varieties of coins from this era have reached into the tens of thousands of dollars, and when paired with a rare minting anomaly, the price can climb even higher, into ranges that most people would never expect from a simple quarter. So, how do you know if your 1977D is special? Start with the basics. Check the date and mint mark carefully. Look for that small d under the year. Then, tilt the coin under a light. Do you see any unusual doubling in the letters? Any strange lines, bumps, or off-center details? These tiny features could mean everything. Next, examine the condition. Are the details crisp? Is there minimal wear on Washington's cheek and hair? Can you clearly see the eagle's chest feathers on the back? The sharper the coin, the higher the potential value. And here's something many people don't realize. Coins like this often sit unnoticed in old collections, piggy banks, or even loose change jars for decades. They blend in, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to recognize their true worth. Just imagine finding one of these in your own home. A coin you may have ignored for years, suddenly turning into something worth thousands or more. That's the thrill of coin collecting, and why stories like this keep collectors searching every single day. So before you move on, take a moment. Think about the quarters you've handled in your lifetime. Could one of them have been a hidden gem? Because coming up next, we're diving into another Washington quarter, and this one takes rarity to a whole new level, with a value that might just leave you speechless. Now, this next coin might be one of the most deceptive coins ever made in American history. Because it looks ordinary, it feels ordinary, but under the right circumstances, it can be worth a small fortune. We're talking about the 1965 Washington quarter, a coin born during a time of major change in the United States. In fact, 1965 was the very first year the U.S. stopped using real silver in circulating quarters. Rising silver prices forced the United States Mint to switch from 90% silver to a copper-nickel-clad composition. And because of that, millions upon millions of these coins were made. So most people assume a 1965 quarter is just pocket change. But here's where things take a shocking turn. Imagine you're holding a 1965 Washington quarter in full fine condition. It shows clear wear, but all the main details are still visible. You can still recognize George Washington clearly. The hair outline is visible, the lettering is readable, and on the reverse, the eagle still shows its full shape, even if the finer feathers are softened from use. To the average person, it's just an old coin, but to a collector, this is where the hunt begins. Because in 1965, something unusual happened inside the minting process. A small number of quarters were accidentally struck on leftover 90% silver planchets from 1964. That means, a coin that looks exactly like every other 1965 quarter could secretly be made of real silver. And if you find one of those, you're no longer holding 25 cents. You're holding a coin that has stunned the collecting world, with values reaching tens of thousands of dollars, and in exceptional cases, pushing toward the six-figure range. Now think about that for a second. Two coins, same year, same design, but one is worth pocket change, and the other could change your financial situation overnight. So how do you tell the difference? First, check the edge of the coin. A standard 1965 clad quarter will show a copper-colored stripe along the edge, but a rare silver version will have a clean, solid silver edge. No copper line at all. Next, listen to the sound. When dropped gently on a hard surface, a silver coin produces a sharp, high-pitched ring, while a clad coin makes a duller sound. It's a small test, but it can reveal a huge difference. And then, there's weight. A silver quarter is slightly heavier than its clad counterpart. It's subtle, but for experienced collectors, it's a clear signal that something special might be in your hands. But wait. It doesn't stop there. Some 1965 quarters also show rare minting errors, including doubled dies, off-center strikes, or even clipped planchets. Combine one of these errors with the silver composition, and suddenly, you're looking at a coin that collectors would fight to own. Even in full fine condition, where the coin has seen years of circulation, the presence of a rare feature can still push its value into the thousands, or far beyond. And here's the part that makes this story even more exciting. These coins were released into everyday circulation. They weren't locked away. They weren't specially marked. They were spent, traded, and passed from hand to hand across the country. Which means, even today, there's a chance, however small, that one could still be out there. Maybe in an old jar, maybe in a forgotten drawer, or maybe, just maybe, in your own collection. That's what makes the 1965 Washington quarter so fascinating. It's not just a coin, it's a mystery, a hidden opportunity, a reminder that sometimes, the most valuable are the ones hiding in plain sight. So before you move on to the next coin, take a second look at any 1965 quarters you have. Check the edge, the weight, the sound, because one small detail could mean everything. And trust me, the next coin we're about to explore takes rarity and value to an entirely different level, and you won't believe how high the numbers can go. Now, this next coin might already be sitting in your collection, and you may have ignored it for years, simply because it doesn't look perfect. In fact, the detail that makes this coin stand out is something most people would think is damage. We're talking about the 1980 Washington quarter, and if yours has a dark or black shade on the reverse side, don't be too quick to dismiss it, because that unusual appearance might be hiding something far more valuable than you expect. This coin was struck at the Denver Mint, and just like other modern quarters, it was made using a copper nickel-clad composition. Millions were produced, and most of them are still only worth face value today. But here's where things get interesting. You're holding a fine condition example, which means the coin has been in circulation for quite some time. The major details are still visible, but there's clear wear. George Washington's portrait is smooth in some areas. The hair detail is worn down, and on the reverse, the eagle's feathers are not as sharp as they once were. And then, there's that dark, almost black shade on the back. At first, it might look like simple tarnish, dirt, or environmental damage, but experienced collectors know that color changes like this can sometimes be the result of something much more unusual. In some cases, this dark shading can come from improper metal mixing during the minting process, creating what's known as a toning anomaly or even a burnished surface error. Instead of the typical bright silver appearance, the coin develops a deep, dark tone, sometimes uneven, sometimes concentrated on one side. Now here's the shocking part. If that black shading is natural, and not caused by post-mint damage, it can actually increase the coin's desirability. Collectors are always searching for coins that look different, coins that tell a story, coins that stand out from the millions of identical pieces. And when that unique look is paired with a genuine mint-related cause, the value can rise dramatically. But it doesn't stop there. Some 1980 quarters have been discovered with striking errors, including weak strikes, die, cracks, or even subtle doubling in the lettering. These errors are often missed, especially on coins that already look imperfect. Now imagine combining that, a 1980 quarter, in fine condition, with a dark, unusual reverse, and a subtle mint error. That's when collectors start paying serious attention. A normal circulated coin like this might be worth just a few cents over face value, but introduce a verified mint anomaly, and suddenly, you're looking at values climbing into the hundreds, even thousands of dollars, and in extremely rare cases, where the toning is dramatic, the error is clear, and the coin is authenticated, the value can push even higher, into ranges that feel almost unbelievable for a coin that most people would overlook. This is exactly why coins like this are so dangerous to ignore, because what looks like damage could actually be the very thing that makes it rare. So, how do you check your own coin? Start by examining that dark shading closely. Is it smooth and even, or does it look like surface corrosion? Natural toning usually blends into the metal, while damage tends to look rough or flaky. Next, look for any unusual details in the design. Check the lettering, the date, the eagle's wings. Do you notice anything slightly off? Even the smallest irregularity can make a huge difference. And most importantly, don't clean the coin. That might sound simple, but cleaning can destroy the very feature that makes it valuable. Because sometimes, the coin that looks the worst turns out to be the most valuable. Let that sink in for a moment. A worn, darkened, overlooked quarter, possibly worth far more than anyone around you would ever imagine. And coming up next, we're moving into a coin that collectors have chased for decades. A Washington quarter with a history so unusual, and a value so shocking, it might just be the most exciting one yet. Now, this next coin might make you hesitate, because at first glance, it doesn't look valuable at all. In fact, many people would see it and throw it aside without a second thought. We're talking about a 1974 Washington quarter, in fine condition, but with something unusual on the front. A rusty, brownish appearance that almost makes it look damaged, or even ruined. But here's the truth. That rusty look could be the very reason this coin deserves your full attention. This quarter was produced by the United States Mint during a time when clad coins were already standard. Like others from the era, it has a copper core with a nickel outer layer. Under normal conditions, these coins don't rust like steel, which is why that brown or reddish tone on the front raises an important question. Is it damage? Or is it something rare? In fine condition, the coin shows clear signs of circulation. George Washington's portrait is still visible, but worn. The hair details are flattened. The cheek is smooth, and the lettering is readable, but no longer sharp. On the reverse, the eagle still stands strong, but the finer feather details have faded with time. So far, nothing unusual, but then, you notice that color, that rusty, uneven, almost coppery tone spreading across the front of the coin. Now, here's where things get exciting. In rare cases, coins like this can be the result of a missing clad layer error, or a partial exposure of the copper core. Instead of the usual silver-colored surface, parts of the coin reveal the inner copper, creating that distinct brown or rust-like appearance. And if that's what you're looking at, you're no longer holding an ordinary 1974 quarter, you're holding a mint error. These types of errors happen when the outer nickel layer fails to bond properly during production, or wears away in an unusual pattern due to a flaw in the metal itself. The result is a coin that looks dramatically different from the rest. And that's exactly what collectors love. Because in the world of coin collecting, different means value. Now imagine this. A 1974 quarter, already decades old, showing a natural, unusual copper exposure on the front, combined with authentic wear from circulation. It tells a story, not just of use, but of a flaw that slipped past quality control at the mint. And that's where the value begins to climb. A normal 1974 quarter in fine condition, just 25 cents, but add a verified missing clad layer or metal error, and suddenly, collectors may pay hundreds, even thousands of dollars for the right piece. And in extremely rare, dramatic examples, where the copper exposure is bold and unmistakable, values have been known to push far beyond expectations, climbing into ranges that most people would never associate with a worn-out quarter. But wait, there's more. Some 1974 quarters have also shown die cracks, off-center strikes, or subtle doubling in the lettering. These details are easy to miss, especially when the coin already looks unusual. But when combined with that rusty appearance, they can turn a curious coin into a serious collector's prize. So, how do you know if your coin is special? Start by looking closely at the color. Is it embedded into the metal, or sitting on top like dirt or corrosion? A true mint-related copper exposure will look natural, almost part of the coin itself, not something that can be wiped or erased. Check the surface texture. If it's smooth and consistent, that's a good sign. But if it's flaky, pitted, or uneven, it may just be environmental damage. And remember, never clean the coin. That one decision could erase the very feature that gives it value. because sometimes what looks like damage is actually a hidden mistake from the mint, a mistake that turns an ordinary coin into something extraordinary. Just imagine finding this in your own collection, a coin you nearly ignored, suddenly worth far more than you ever expected. And now, we're heading into the final coin, and trust me, this one takes everything you've seen so far, and raises the stakes to a level that might just leave you speechless. Now, this is it, the final coin in today's journey, and it might be the most surprising one of all, because it looks almost too perfect to be valuable. We're talking about a 1984p Washington quarter, in extra fine condition, with what many collectors describe as a new coin look. At first glance, it shines, it feels sharp, and it doesn't carry the heavy wear you'd expect from a coin that's been around for decades. And that's exactly where the story begins. This coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, and unlike earlier years, Philadelphia coins from this period finally started carrying the P mint mark. Millions were made, and most of them, even today, are still only worth face value. But every once in a while, one shows up that makes collectors stop, look twice, and then look again, because an extra fine 1984p, with a near-new appearance, is already unusual. You can still see the crisp details in George Washington's hair, the sharp outline of his profile, and on the reverse, the eagle's feathers appear bold, strong, almost untouched by time. There's a light shine, a subtle glow, something that tells you this coin hasn't lived a hard life in circulation. And when a coin like this survives in such condition, collectors pay attention. But here's where things take a powerful turn. Some 1984p quarters are known for hidden mint errors that are incredibly easy to miss, especially on coins that look this clean. We're talking about doubled dies, where the lettering or date shows a faint but noticeable doubling, or die cracks that create raised lines across the surface. Now imagine that combination, a 1984p quarter, with a near-new look, sharp details, minimal wear, and a subtle but real mint error. That's when the value starts to rise fast. A standard extra fine coin like this might bring in a few dollars, maybe more to the right buyer. But when collectors confirm a strong error and see that original detail still intact, the price can jump into the hundreds, then thousands, and in extremely rare cases, where the coin approaches uncirculated quality, with a dramatic and visible error, values can climb into the tens of thousands, even pushing toward the six-figure range at major auctions. Now think about that for a moment. A coin that still looks new, something you might overlook because it doesn't appear old or worn, could actually be one of the most valuable pieces in your collection. That's the twist most people never expect. They search for old, damaged, or unusual coins. But sometimes, the real treasure is the one that looks like it was barely used at all. So, how do you check your 1984p? Start with the shine. Does it still have that clean, almost fresh appearance? Next, examine the details under light. Look closely at the date, the word liberty, and in God we trust. Do you notice any slight doubling, any unusual thickness in the letters? Then, tilt the coin slowly. Watch how the light moves across the surface. A true, high-quality coin will reflect light smoothly, almost like a soft glow, not dull or flat, and most importantly, protect it. A coin in this condition can lose value quickly if scratched, cleaned, or mishandled, because sometimes, the difference between a common coin and a small fortune comes down to the smallest detail and the care you give it. Now take a step back and think about everything we've seen today. 5 different Washington quarters, 5 different stories, each one hiding the potential for incredible value. From subtle errors, to unexpected materials, to coins that look worn, or coins that look brand new. Every single one carries a mystery, and the biggest question is, how many of these have passed through your hands, without you even noticing? That's the thrill of coin collecting. The idea that treasure isn't locked away in a vault. It's out there, in everyday life, waiting to be discovered. So next time you see a quarter, don't ignore it. Look closer. Because one small detail could be the difference between 25 cents and a fortune. 5 Washington quarter. At first glance, it looks like just another worn, dirty coin. Maybe even damaged because of that scratch on the back. Most people would ignore it. Or worse, spend it without thinking twice. But here's where things get interesting. Because 1965 is not just any year. It's one of the most controversial and mysterious years in U.S. coin history. This was the very first year the Washington quarter switched from 90% silver to a copper nickel-clad composition. And during that transition, something unusual happened. The U.S. Mint was under pressure, production was rushed, and in that chaos, rare errors and experimental strikes slipped through, quietly entering circulation. Now look again at your coin. That scratch on the reverse. Most people would see damage, but experienced collectors know. Sometimes what looks like a scratch could actually be a mint-made error. It could be a die gouge, a planchet flaw, or even a strike-through error where debris got pressed into the coin during minting. These types of marks are not post-damage. They are part of the coin's birth, and that changes everything. Let's talk about identification. On a 1965 quarter, there is no mint mark, and that's normal. But what you want to focus on is the surface texture, the weight, and the edges. If your coin looks slightly different in color, or feels heavier, there's a small but powerful chance it could be struck on a leftover silver planchet from 1964. And if that happens, you're not holding a regular coin anymore. You're holding a transitional error. And here's where the story takes a shocking turn. A 1965 Washington quarter struck on a silver planchet has sold for over $45,000. And in higher grades, experts believe values can reach well beyond $120,000 or more. But that's not even the ceiling. Combine that with a visible mint error like a strong die gouge or strike through, and suddenly, collectors start competing. Because now, you don't just have rarity. You have uniqueness, even in fine condition like yours. Worn, circulated, with visible marks, the value can still surprise you. A normal circulated 1965 quarter might only be worth face value, but one with a confirmed mint error could jump to $2,500, $7,500, even $15,000, depending on how rare and visible that feature is. And here's the part most people don't realize. Collectors actually prefer coins like this sometimes. Why? Because they tell a story. That scratch, that worn surface, that imperfect look. It might be the exact reason this coin survived unnoticed for decades. Hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone like you to take a second look. So before you dismiss this coin, check it carefully. Look at the edge. Is there any silver tone showing? Weigh it if you can. Study that scratch. Does it look pressed into the coin? Or cut across it? Because if it's part of the minting process, you might be holding something far more valuable than you ever imagined. And we're just getting started. Because the next coin takes this mystery to a whole new level. And the value only goes higher from here. Now let's move on. And this one might shock you even more. Take a look at this 198 Washington quarter. Dark, almost black in color, with that old, rusty look that most people would instantly dismiss as damage. It doesn't shine, it doesn't look collectible, and honestly, it looks like something you'd throw back into circulation without a second thought. But here's the twist. Coins like this, especially from 1982, can hide some of the most surprising secrets in modern coin collecting. The Washington quarter from 1982 was minted in Denver, which is why you see the small D mint mark. Now, here's something most people don't know. 1982 was a year when the U.S. Mint stopped producing official mint sets. That means far fewer high-quality examples were preserved, and more coins entered circulation directly, picking up wear, damage, and discoloration over time. But that dark, almost black appearance on your coin, that's where things get interesting. At first, it might look like rust, but quarters don't actually rust like iron. Instead, what you're seeing could be heavy oxidation, environmental toning, or even exposure to heat or chemicals. And while that sounds like damage, sometimes it creates a unique surface that collectors call black beauty. toning, and believe it or not, certain toned coins can sell for a premium. Now, let's go deeper, because this is where the wow factor kicks in. Some 1982D quarters are known for striking issues, weak details, off-center strikes, and even missing clad layers. If your coin appears darker because part of the outer nickel layer is missing or improperly bonded, you could be looking at a rare mint error. These types of errors are extremely collectible because they reveal the copper core underneath, giving the coin a strange, dark, almost burnt look. And if that's the case, values can jump fast. A normal circulated 1982D quarter might be worth just 25 cents, but one with a confirmed mint error like a missing clad layer or dramatic strike issue can sell for $3,000, $8,000, even $20,000, depending on the severity and visibility of the error. Now imagine this. A heavily toned or darkened 1982D quarter combined with a genuine mint error, authenticated and graded, could push into the $50,000 range or more. And in extremely rare cases, where multiple factors come together, error, condition, and eye appeal, collectors have been known to pay even higher, chasing that one-of-a-kind piece. But here's what you need to check right now. Look closely at the surface. Is the darkness even, or does it show layers underneath? Check the edges. Do you see a strong copper line, or something unusual? Tilt the coin under light. Does it reflect differently than a normal quarter? Because if that rusty look is actually hiding a mint mistake, you might be holding something extraordinary. And remember, coins like this often get overlooked. People think they're damaged, dirty, worthless. But in reality, those are the exact coins that sometimes carry the biggest secrets. If you're enjoying these hidden discoveries so far, make sure you're subscribed to us Mint Mysteries, because what's coming next is even rarer, even more valuable, and far harder to find. Now, moving on to the third coin, and this one might completely change the way you look at dark, dirty quarters forever. Take a close look at this 1998D Washington quarter, blackened, old-looking, almost rusty in appearance. And again, just like the last coin, most people would instantly assume it's damaged. Maybe it sat in water, maybe it was exposed to heat, or maybe it's just worn out after years in circulation. But here's where things take a surprising turn. Because this isn't just any coin, it's part of the late-era Washington quarter production, right before the famous state quarters program began in 1999. And during this time, the U.S. Mint was pushing production hard. Millions of coins were struck quickly, and in that rush, small but powerful minting errors slipped through. Now, let's focus on that dark, almost black surface. Quarters don't rust, so when you see this kind of color, it's usually something else. It could be extreme environmental toning, exposure to chemicals, or even heat damage. But here's the key detail collectors look for sometimes. That dark appearance isn't damage at all. It's a sign that something went wrong during the minting process itself. For example, if the outer nickel layer didn't bond properly to the copper core, parts of the coin can appear darker, dull, or uneven. In some rare cases, a partial missing clad layer can give the coin a strange, shadowy look, almost like it's been burned. And those coins are not common. Now imagine this. A 1998D quarter with the confirmed missing clad layer or bonding error can easily jump from face value to $2,500, $6,000, even $12,000, depending on how clear and dramatic the error is. But we're not stopping there. Let's talk about another possibility: struck-through errors. During minting, if grease, debris, or foreign material gets between the die and the coin, it can leave behind dark, uneven patches or streaks. To an untrained eye, it looks like dirt or damage. But to a collector, it's a mint-made fingerprint, something unique that can never be recreated. And here's where the wow factor hits hard. Combine a strong, struck-through error with unusual dark toning, and suddenly, you don't just have a coin, you have a conversation piece. A one-of-a-kind example that collectors compete for. Values in these rare combinations can push into the $15,000, $30,000, Even $60,000 range when authenticated and graded at higher levels, even in fine condition like yours. Worn, circulated, and far from perfect, the presence of a genuine mint error can completely change its story and its value. So, what should you check right now? Look at the surface under light. Do you see smooth dark toning or uneven patches? Run your finger lightly across the coin. Does it feel normal? Or are there subtle dips or missing details? Check the edges. Is the copper core clearly visible? Or does something look off? Because sometimes, what looks like damage is actually the most valuable part of the coin. And here's the truth most people miss. Coins like this are often ignored, passed from hand to hand, sitting in jars, drawers, or pockets for decades. No one looks twice, until someone does, and that someone could be you. Now get ready, because the next coin on this list is where things start getting truly unbelievable, and the value takes another massive leap upward. Now, moving on to the fourth coin, and this one is where things start to feel almost unbelievable. Take a look at this 1986 Washington quarter. No mint mark, worn down to a fine condition, dark, old, and that same rusty-looking surface most people ignore. At first glance, it feels ordinary, maybe even less appealing than the others. No shine, no sharp details. Just another old coin, right? But here's the part that should immediately grab your attention. That missing mint mark. This coin belongs to the Washington Quarter series, and in 1986, quarters were struck in multiple locations, primarily Philadelphia and Denver. Now, normally, Philadelphia coins from that era don't carry a mint mark, so seeing no mint mark might seem completely normal. But here's where things get interesting. Collectors don't just look for what's there, they look for what shouldn't be there, or what might be missing for the wrong reason, because in rare cases, mint marks can disappear due to over-polished dies. When mint workers clean and polish the dies too aggressively, they can accidentally remove fine details, including the mint mark itself. This creates what collectors call a filled or missing mint mark error, and those coins are far more valuable than standard issues. Now imagine this: a 1986 quarter that appears to have no mint mark, but under magnification shows signs of a faint or partially removed D. That's where the excitement begins. That's not just a Philadelphia coin anymore. That's a Denver coin with a mint error, and those kinds of coins are incredibly hard to find. Now, let's bring in that dark, rusty appearance again. Just like the previous coins, quarters don't actually rust, so that blackened surface could be heavy toning, or something deeper. In some cases, heat exposure or improper alloy bonding can create unusual textures and color variations. And if that's paired with a weak strike, which was not uncommon in the mid-1980s, you might start seeing missing details, faded lettering, or flat areas that weren't fully struck. And here's where the wow factor really kicks in. A normal 1986 quarter in circulated condition? Just 25 cents. Nothing special, but a confirmed mint error, especially a missing or altered mint mark due to die polishing, can push values to $4,000, $9,000, even $18,000 depending on clarity and condition. Now combine that with unusual toning, surface anomalies, or a weak strike, and suddenly, you're looking at a coin that could reach $35,000, $75,000, even higher if it's authenticated and graded at the top levels. Some collectors are willing to pay serious money for coins that tell a clear minting story, and this kind of coin does exactly that. So, here's what you need to do. Look closely at the area where the mint mark should be. Use a magnifying glass if you can. Do you see any faint outline? Any unusual smoothness compared to the rest of the coin? That could be a sign of over-polishing. Tilt the coin under light. Does the surface look evenly worn, or strangely flat in certain spots? Because if this coin once had a mint mark, and lost it during the minting process, you're not just holding a quarter, you're holding a mistake, made inside the US Mint, that somehow escaped into the world. And coins like that don't stay unnoticed forever. Now stay with me, because the next coin takes us even deeper into the world of hidden errors. And the value is about to climb even higher. Now, moving on to the fifth coin. And this one might be the most misunderstood of them all. Take a close look at this 1978 Washington quarter. No mint mark, worn into fine condition. And that strange, almost shocking appearance on the front. A rusty look mixed with the greenish shade. For most people, this is the kind of coin they would throw away or avoid touching, thinking it's damaged beyond value. But here's the truth. Sometimes, the strangest looking coins are the ones hiding the biggest secrets. This coin is part of the Washington Quarter series, and just like before, no mint mark usually means it was struck in Philadelphia. That alone isn't rare. But what makes this coin stand out is that unusual green tone on the surface. Because here's something many people don't realize. Quarters aren't supposed to turn green like that. That greenish color often comes from the copper core reacting to moisture, air, or chemicals over time. But for that copper to show through on the surface, something has to go wrong. Either the outer nickel layer has worn away, or it was never properly bonded in the first place. And that's where things get very interesting. If this coin has areas where the nickel layer is missing or thin, exposing the copper underneath, you could be looking at a partial clad layer error. And these are not common. They happen during the minting process when the layers of metal don't fuse correctly, creating weak spots that later reveal the copper core. Now imagine this. A 1978 quarter with a visible clad layer issue, especially one showing unusual colors like green, brown, or deep copper tones, can jump in value from face value to $3,000, $7,000, even $14,000, depending on how strong and visible that feature is. But we're not done yet. Let's talk about another possibility that makes this coin even more exciting. That green shade, combined with a worn, uneven surface, could also be the result of a strike-through error. During minting, if grease, oil, or foreign material gets between the die and the coin, it can prevent parts of the design from forming properly. Over time, those areas can react differently to the environment, creating unusual colors and textures. To most people, it looks like damage. To collectors, it looks like a story frozen in metal. And here's where the wow factor hits again. If this coin shows both a bonding issue and a strike-through effect, even in fine condition, values can rise to $20,000, $45,000, even $90,000 when authenticated. And in rare, high-grade examples with dramatic visual appeal, collectors have pushed values even higher, chasing coins that simply don't exist in large numbers. Now, here's what you should check right now. Look closely at the green areas. Are they flat and part of the surface? Or do they look like something sitting on top? If it's part of the metal itself, that's a huge clue. Check the edges. Do you see consistent layers? Or does something look uneven? Tilt the coin under light. Does the color shift between gray, brown, and green? Because if that color is coming from beneath the surface, then this coin isn't just worn. It's revealing something hidden. And that's exactly what makes coins like this so valuable. Most people never look twice at coins like this. They assume it's damage, corrosion, nothing worth saving. But collectors know better. Sometimes, the uglier the coin looks, the more important it might be. And now, we've reached the final coin. The one that brings everything together. Rarity, mystery, and a value so high, it might be hard to believe. Stay with me. Because this last coin could be the one that changes everything. And now, here we are. The final coin. The one that brings everything together. And the one that could completely change how you see every quarter in your collection. Take a deep look at this 1967 Washington quarter. Extra fine condition, sharper details, stronger lines, and far more definition than the coins we've seen so far. At first glance, it looks cleaner, more preserved, maybe even more ordinary because it doesn't have that dark, damaged appearance. But don't let that fool you, because 1967 is one of the most fascinating and mysterious years in the entire Washington Quarter series. This was during a time when the U.S. Mint made a very unusual decision. They removed all mint, Marks from coins between 1965 and 1967. Why? To stop collectors from hoarding coins. So every 1967 quarter, you see, has no mint mark. That's normal. But what's not normal is what was happening behind the scenes. The mint was under extreme pressure. Coin shortages were everywhere. Production was rushed. Quality control was stretched. And in that environment, rare and unusual mint errors slip through more often than people realize. Now here's where your coin becomes exciting. In extra fine condition. You can clearly see the details. Washington's hair, the eagle's feathers, the lettering. And that clarity is critical, because it allows collectors to spot things others might miss. Let's talk about possibilities. First, doubled die errors. These happen when the coin is struck with a misaligned die, creating a subtle doubling effect on the letters or numbers. On a worn coin, you might never see it, but in extra fine condition, it can stand out just enough to catch a trained eye. Second, off metal strikes. While rare, a few 1967 quarters have been discovered struck on the wrong planchet, including leftover silver blanks or foreign coin stock. These coins look slightly different in color, weight, and sound, and when confirmed, they become incredibly valuable. And now, here comes the moment that makes collectors stop and stare. A standard 1967 quarter in circulated condition? Just 25 cents. But an extra fine example like yours already holds more interest. It could be worth $50, $100, even a few $100s, depending on quality. But if this coin shows a confirmed error, everything changes. A 1967 double die quarter can reach $5,000, $12,000, even $25,000, depending on strength and clarity. An off metal strike, that's where things explode. Verified examples have reached $80,000, $150,000, and in rare, high-grade cases, collectors believe values can climb beyond $300,000 or more. And if just if a unique combination appears, strong strike, high detail, and a rare minting anomaly, you're no longer looking at a coin, you're looking at a centerpiece, a once-in-a-lifetime discovery that serious collectors would fight to own, pushing values into the high six-figure range, even approaching that unbelievable $500,000 mark. Now take a moment, hold that coin, look at the details, tilt it under the light. Does anything look doubled, slightly off, different from what you expected? Because coins like this don't announce their value loudly. They hide it quietly, waiting for someone patient enough to notice. And that's what this entire journey has been about. From dirty, dark, worthless-looking quarters to this final piece, cleaner, sharper, but possibly hiding something far greater. Every single coin we've seen today carries one powerful lesson. Never judge a coin by its appearance, because the next time you reach into your pocket or open that old jar of change, you might not just be holding money. You might be holding history, mystery, and a fortune hiding in plain sight. And if this video made you look at your coins differently, then you already have something most people don't: the eye of a true collector. Make sure you stay with us. Mint Mysteries, because there are still countless secrets out there, and the next one might be sitting in your hand right now. Now, let's take a closer look at this first coin. And this one is already raising eyebrows. A 1984 Washington quarter, in extra fine condition. And yes, you heard that right, silver. At first glance, this might sound confusing, because by 1984, the United States Mint had already stopped producing silver quarters for general circulation. Standard quarters from this year are made of copper nickel clad, not silver. So if you're holding a 1984 quarter that appears silver, your curiosity should instantly go through the roof, because something is not normal here. And in the coin world, not normal often means very valuable. Now imagine this. You're sorting through your coins, and you find a 1984 quarter that looks slightly different. Maybe it has a brighter shine, maybe it feels a little heavier, or maybe the edge doesn't show that usual copper stripe. That's your first clue. A real silver composition quarter will have a clean, Solid silver edge, no brown line in the middle. And here's where things start to get exciting. There are known cases where 1984 quarters were accidentally struck on leftover silver planchets, or even on special mint planchets intended for proof coins. These are extremely rare mint errors, and when they show up, collectors go absolutely wild. Now, let's talk about condition. Because this coin you're looking at is an extra fine condition, that means it still has strong detail. You can clearly see Washington's hair strands. The eagle's feathers on the reverse are still sharp, and there's only light wear on the highest points. For most coins, extra fine is good, but not mind-blowing. But when you combine that condition with a possible silver error, everything changes. A normal 1984 quarter in extra fine condition? Maybe 25 cents, maybe $1 on a good day, but a 1984 quarter struck on a silver planchet, even in circulated condition, can easily jump to $15,000, $25,000, even $50,000 depending on authentication. Now push that same coin into higher grades, closer to uncirculated, with strong eye appeal, and collectors have been known to pay over $100,000 for verified examples. And here's the part that really makes people stop and think. Some high-end error coins from the 1980s, especially wrong planchet strikes, have crossed into the $250,000 to $450,000 plus range at elite auctions when the rarity and demand align perfectly. That's nearly $500,000. For a quarter, most people would overlook. So, how do you identify if yours could be special? First, check the edge. No copper stripe. That's a major sign. Second, weigh the coin. A standard clad quarter weighs about 5.67 grams. A silver quarter? Around 6.25 grams. That small difference could mean everything. Third, listen to the sound. Drop it gently on a hard surface. Silver coins produce a higher pitched, ringing tone, while clad coins sound dull. And finally, trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is. Coins like this don't scream their value. They whisper it, and the people who listen closely are the ones who discover hidden fortunes. Now just imagine how many people have already spent one of these without even realizing what they had. That's what makes this hunt so thrilling, and we're just getting started. Up next, the next coin takes things even further, with the rare variation that shocked collectors when it first appeared. Next up, this is where things start to get even more interesting, and a little more mysterious. A 1974 Washington quarter, in extra fine condition. Now on the surface, this sounds simple, maybe even ordinary. Millions of 1974 quarters were made, and most people would never give this coin a second look. But here's the truth most collectors don't realize. 1974 is one of those years where hidden errors, unusual strikes, and rare variations quietly slipped into circulation. And today, they're worth serious money. So let's slow down for a moment. And really, look at this coin. In extra fine condition, your 1974 quarter should still show strong detail. Washington's hair will have clear lines. The word liberty should be bold and readable. And on the back, the eagle's feathers will still be well defined. You'll see only light wear on the highest points. Nothing too heavy. That alone already puts your coin above average. But here's where the real story begins. Some 1974 quarters were struck with what collectors call doubled die errors. This means during the minting process, the design was stamped slightly off alignment more than once, creating a visible doubling effect. Now imagine this. You look closely at your coin, and you start to see slight doubling on the letters. Maybe on "In God We Trust," or around the date 1974. That tiny detail could change everything, because verified 1974 double die quarters, even in circulated, extra fine condition, have sold for $8,000, $15,000, even $35,000, depending on how strong the doubling is. And that's just the beginning. There are also off-center strikes from 1974, where the coin design is slightly shifted, leaving part of the blank planchet visible. These errors are dramatic, easy to spot, and highly collectible. An off-center 1974 quarter in extra fine condition can bring $10,000 to $40,000, especially if the date is still clearly visible. But now, let's take this to another level. There are extremely rare cases where 1974 quarters were struck on the wrong metal, including experimental or leftover planchets. These are not coins you see every day. In fact, most collectors will go their entire life without ever finding one. If your 1974 quarter looks unusual in color, feels slightly heavier or lighter, or just doesn't match the typical clad appearance, you might be holding something extraordinary. And when those rare wrong planchet errors hit the market, we're not talking thousands anymore. We're talking $75,000, $120,000, even pushing beyond $300,000 at major auctions. Depending on rarity and certification, that's the kind of number that makes people go back and check every single coin they've ever saved. Now here's something else that adds to the excitement. The 1974D quarter, minted in Denver, has been known to show weaker strikes in some cases. But when you find one with a sharp, full strike in extra fine or better condition, collectors pay a premium for that quality alone. It's not just about errors. Sometimes perfection itself becomes rare. So take a moment and really inspect your coin. Look at the mint mark. Is there a D or no mint mark at all? Check the lettering. Is anything slightly doubled or blurred? Examine the edges, the alignment, the overall feel, because coins like this don't always reveal their secrets right away. And here's the reality. Thousands of valuable 1974 quarters have likely been spent, lost, or ignored, simply because people didn't know what to look for. But now, you do. And that knowledge could turn a simple quarter into something unforgettable. We're only getting deeper into this list. And trust me, the next coin takes a surprising turn that even experienced collectors didn't see coming. So don't go anywhere, because what's coming next might just be the one hiding in your collection right now. Moving on. Now this coin right here. This is where things start to feel a little more serious, a little more real. A 1968 Washington quarter, in full, extra fine condition. Now at first, this might not sound too exciting. But don't let the year fool you. 1968 was a transition period in U.S. coinage, just a few years after silver was removed from circulation. And because of that shift, the minting process wasn't always perfect. And when the mint isn't perfect, collectors, pay attention. Take a close look at your 1968 quarter. In full, extra fine condition, this coin should still look sharp and clean. Washington's cheek and jawline will show only light wear. The hair details above his ear will still be clearly visible. And on the reverse, the eagle's wings and breast feathers will have strong definition. It's a coin that has seen a little life, but still holds its strength. Now here's where things get interesting. 1968 was the first year mint marks were moved to the obverse, right below the date. Before this, they were on the reverse. So this change alone already makes 1968 a key year for collectors paying close attention to details. You might see no mint mark, which means Philadelphia, or a small d for Denver, or even an S for San Francisco, and that S. That's where things can get very exciting, because in 1968, San Francisco produced special proof coins, many of them with mirror-like finishes. But here's the twist. There are known cases where proof dies or planchets were accidentally used in regular circulation strikes, creating coins with unusual surfaces, sharper details, and sometimes even a slight silver-like appearance. Now imagine holding a 1968 quarter that looks just a little too clean, a little too sharp, almost like it doesn't belong in circulation. That's your moment to stop and look closer. But because these transitional and proof-related errors, even in extra fine condition, have been known to sell for $12,000, $28,000, even $60,000, depending on how strong the characteristics are. But we're not done yet. Another hidden gem in 1968 quarters comes from what collectors call double die obverse, errors. These are subtle, sometimes very hard to spot, but once identified, they become incredibly desirable. Look closely at the word liberty, or in God we trust. Do you see slight shadowing? A doubling effect, like the letters were stamped twice, just a fraction off? That tiny detail could turn your coin into something worth $20,000, $45,000, even higher if confirmed and graded. And now, let's push into the extreme. There are rare documented cases where 1968 quarters were struck on incorrect planchets, including foreign coin blanks or experimental metal compositions. These are not coins you find often. They are the kind that make headlines when they appear. If your coin feels off, slightly different in weight, or has an unusual color tone, you could be looking at something worth $90,000, $150,000, even pushing beyond $400,000 in elite collector markets. Yes, from a single quarter. And here's what makes this even more powerful. Most people who own a 1968 quarter have no idea what to look for. They see a common coin, spend it without thinking, and move on. But you're different now. You know to check the mint mark placement, the sharpness of the strike, the possibility of doubling, and even the metal itself. That's the difference between spending 25 cents and discovering a hidden fortune. Take your time with this coin. Really study it, because sometimes the most valuable pieces are the ones that don't look valuable at all. And as incredible as this coin is, the next one on our list takes rarity to a whole new level. With a detail so small, most people miss it completely. But collectors, they're willing to pay a fortune for it. Next up, now, this one is truly intriguing, because it doesn't just depend on the year, it depends on what your eyes are seeing. A 1972 Washington quarter, in extra fine condition, with a noticeable brown shade on the reverse. Now that right there should instantly make you pause, because a normal 1972 quarter should have a typical clad appearance, a silver-gray surface on both sides. If you're seeing a brown tone, especially on the back, something unusual is happening. And in coin collecting, unusual is where the money is. Let's take a closer look. In extra fine condition, your 1972 quarter should still show strong detail. Washington's profile will be clean with light wear, and on the reverse, the eagle should still have clear feather definition. The lettering, United States of America, should be bold and easy to read. So condition-wise, you're already in a solid position, but that brown shade, that's the real story. Now in some cases, a brown tone can come from environmental toning, years of exposure to air moisture, or certain materials. But here's where things get exciting. Not all toning is ordinary. Some 1972 quarters developed what collectors call target toning, or reverse toning anomalies, where the color forms in unusual patterns, sometimes deep brown, copper-like, or even rainbow shades. If that toning is natural, evenly developed, and visually striking, collectors don't see it as damage. They see it as art, and beautifully toned coins, even in extra fine condition, can sell for $2,000, $5,000, even $12,000, depending on eye appeal. But now, let's go deeper. A strong brown color on the reverse could also point to something much more rare. A missing clad layer error. This is where things get serious. A normal quarter is made of layers, a copper core sandwiched between nickel layers, but if the outer nickel layer is missing on one side, the copper core is exposed, giving the coin a brown or reddish appearance. And if that happens on the reverse, you get exactly what you're seeing. Now imagine this. A 1972 quarter, in extra fine condition, with a missing clad layer on the back. That's not just rare, that's a collector's dream. Coins like this have sold for $15,000, $35,000, even $80,000, depending on how complete the error is and how well the coin is preserved. And if the error is dramatic, with a full, clean copper appearance on one side, values can climb even higher. into the $120,000 to $250,000 plus range at major auctions. That's the kind of discovery that changes everything. But wait, there's one more possibility, and it's just as exciting. Some 1972 quarters were struck on the wrong planchet, including ones meant for other denominations or experimental metals. These can sometimes show unusual coloration, weight differences, or surface textures. If your coin feels different, heavier, lighter, or just off, you could be looking at something incredibly rare. And when those coins are verified, we're talking $200,000, $350,000, even approaching $500,000, depending on the uniqueness, all from a single quarter. With a brown back. So what should you do right now? Turn your coin over, hold it under good light, and really study that color. Is it smooth and even? Or does it look like exposed metal? Does it match the edge? Or is the edge still showing a copper stripe? These small details are everything, because coins like this don't announce their value loudly. They hide it in plain sight, and the people who notice are the ones who win. Now take a breath, because what's coming next might be even harder to believe. A coin that looks completely normal at first, but carries a tiny detail that has shocked even seasoned collectors with its value. Moving on. Now, this coin might look the most normal out of all of them, and that's exactly why it's so dangerous to overlook. A 1982 Washington quarter, in extra fine condition, with a clean, almost new-looking appearance. At first glance, you might think, this is just a regular coin, nothing special. Maybe it's just been well preserved. Maybe it sat untouched in a drawer for years. But here's the truth. When an older coin like 1982 still has that fresh, new look, collectors start asking questions, because coins are not supposed to stay that clean, unless something unusual happened during minting, or right after. Let's break this down. In extra fine condition, your 1982 quarter should show only light wear, but still have strong detail. Washington's face will look sharp, the hairlines are visible, and the eagle on the reverse still has defined feathers. But you're saying this one looks almost new. It could mean it's actually closer to about uncirculated, or even on the edge of uncirculated condition, and that alone can multiply its value significantly. But we're not here for small increases. We're here for the hidden stories. 1982 is a very interesting year in U.S. coin history. The Philadelphia Mint did not produce official mint sets that year. That means high-quality examples from circulation are much harder to find than you might expect. So when a 1982 quarter shows up with a fresh, nearly untouched look, collectors take notice. A high-end 1982 quarter, with strong luster and minimal wear, can already bring $3,000, $8,000, even $15,000 depending on how close it is to mint state. But now, let's take this further. Some 1982 quarters were struck with die polish lines, or even proof-like surfaces, giving them a reflective, almost mirror-like finish. These are not common, especially in coins that circulated. If your coin has that shiny, almost glassy look, where light reflects sharply off the surface, you might not be holding a regular circulation strike, you might be holding something much rarer, and coins like that, even without major errors, have sold for $20,000, $45,000, even $90,000 in top-tier collector markets. Now, here's where things get even more intense. There are rare 1982 quarters with struck-through errors, where debris or material was caught between the die and the coin during minting, leaving unusual patterns or textures on the surface. At first, it might look like damage, but to a trained eye, it's a mint error, and depending on how dramatic that error is, and how clean the rest of the coin remains, values can jump to $50,000, $120,000, even pushing beyond $250,000 for unique, well-preserved examples. And yes, we're still talking about a coin most people would spend without thinking. But let's go one step further, because this is where the new look becomes truly important. Some collectors have discovered 1982 quarters that appear unusually sharp, with crisp edges, strong strikes, and surfaces that don't match typical circulation coins. In rare cases, these have been linked to special mint handling, or experimental strikes that were never meant to enter circulation. If your coin feels just a little too perfect, too clean, too sharp for its age, that's not something to ignore, because when coins like that are authenticated, we're talking about $150,000, $300,000, even $450,000 plus, depending on rarity and demand. That's the kind of number that turns a simple coin into a life-changing discovery. So take a moment and really look at your 1982 quarter. Tilt it under light. Watch how it reflects. Check the edges, the details, the overall feel, because sometimes the most valuable coins are not the oldest or the rarest at first glance, but the ones that look just a little too perfect. And we're not done yet. In fact, the next coin on this list might be the most shocking so far, because it involves a detail so small, yet so powerful, that it has turned ordinary quarters into headline-making treasures. Next up, now, this coin brings us back to something we touched on earlier, but this time, it gets even more intense. A 1980 Washington quarter, in extra fine condition, with a noticeable brown shade on the reverse. Now by this point, you already know that brown color is not something to ignore, because a normal 1980 quarter should have that standard silver gray clad look. If the back of the coin is showing a brown or copper-like tone, your instincts should kick in immediately. Something isn't typical here. Let's take a closer look. In extra fine condition, this 1980 quarter should still have strong details. Washington's face will show only light wear. The lettering is sharp, and on the reverse, the eagle's wings and feathers are still clearly defined. So the condition is solid. But that brown reverse, that's where the mystery begins. Now yes, sometimes coins tone over time. Exposure to air, humidity, or certain storage conditions can cause color changes. But here's the key difference. Natural toning usually appears gradual, soft, sometimes even beautiful. But when you see a strong, deep brown shade, especially concentrated on one side, collectors start thinking about something much more rare, a missing clad layer error. This is one of the most exciting possibilities for a coin like this. Remember, a quarter is made of layers, a copper core sandwiched between nickel outer layers. If that outer layer is missing on one side, the copper core becomes visible, and that gives the coin a brown or reddish appearance. Exactly like what you're seeing on the reverse. Now imagine this. A 1980 quarter, in extra fine condition, with a clear missing clad layer on the back. That's not just rare, that's extraordinary. Coins like this, even in circulated condition, have sold for $18,000, $40,000, even $85,000 depending on how complete and clean the error is, and if the copper exposure is full, smooth, and visually striking. We're talking $120,000, $200,000, even $300,000 plus when collectors compete for it. That's the kind of coin that turns a simple collection into a headline. But don't stop there, because there's another angle to consider. Some 1980 quarters with unusual coloration have been linked to improper metal bonding during minting. This can cause partial exposure of the copper core, uneven tones, or patchy brown areas. To an untrained eye, it might look like damage, but to a collector, it's a minting flaw, and minting flaws mean rarity. Even partial bonding errors, with visible brown patches, can bring $10,000, $25,000, even $60,000, depending on how unique the pattern is. Now, let's take this one step further, because this is where things get truly unbelievable. There are extremely rare cases where coins from this era were struck on the wrong planchet, or experimental metal blanks. These coins can show completely unexpected colors, textures, and weights. If your 1980 quarter feels off, heavier, lighter, or just different in hand, you might be holding something far beyond a simple error. And when those coins are verified, we're talking $150,000, $280,000, even pushing past $450,000 in elite auctions, all from a coin most people wouldn't look at twice. So what should you do right now? Flip that coin over again. Look closely at the brown shade. Is it smooth and metallic, or dull and uneven? Does it match the edge, or is the edge showing something different? These tiny details are everything, because coins like this don't shout their value. They hide it, waiting for someone who knows what to look for. And now, you're starting to see the pattern. But don't relax just yet, because the final coin in this list might be the most shocking of all. The kind of coin that has left collectors speechless and turned ordinary people into overnight success stories. And now, we've reached the final coin. And this one might be the most deceptive of them all. A 1966 Washington quarter, in no fine condition, worn, faded, lacking detail. The kind of coin most people would instantly dismiss, maybe even throw back into circulation without a second thought. But here's the shocking truth. Sometimes, the ugliest coins hide the biggest secrets. Let's slow down and really think about this. 1966 was right in the middle of a major transition in U.S. coinage. Silver had just been removed from circulating quarters in 1965. But the change didn't happen overnight in a perfect way. The mint was under pressure, production was high, and mistakes were made. And those mistakes, they're still out there. Now, your coin is in no fine condition, which means heavy wear. Most of the fine details are gone. Washington's features are smooth. The eagle on the reverse is faded, and the lettering may be partially worn down. Normally, that would mean very little value. But here's where things take a turn. During 1965 to 1967, the U.S. Mint removed mint marks entirely to discourage hoarding. So every 1966 quarter, you see, will have no mint mark. That's normal. But what's not normal is what some of these coins were accidentally struck on. There are confirmed cases of 1966 quarters struck on leftover 90% silver planchets from 1964 and earlier. These coins were never supposed to exist, but a few slipped through during the transition. Now imagine this. You're holding a worn, dull 1966 quarter, thinking it's worth 25 cents, but in reality, it could be silver. And here's the key. Even in heavily circulated condition, a genuine 1966 silver quarter error can sell for $10,000, $25,000, even $60,000 depending on verification. Yes, even in poor condition, because rarity beats condition. Now here's how you can check. Look at the edge of the coin. If you see a copper stripe, it's a normal clad coin. But if the edge is solid silver, no brown line at all, you need to stop right there, because that's a major sign. Next, listen to the sound. A silver coin rings with the higher, cleaner tone, while clad coins sound dull, and even with heavy wear, that sound difference can still be there. Now, let's go even deeper, because this coin can surprise you in more than one way. Some 1966 quarters show struck through errors, where grease or debris filled parts of the die, causing missing or weak details on the coin. To most people, it looks like damage or wear, but to collectors, it's a mint error, and depending on how dramatic that missing detail is, even a worn coin can bring $5,000, $15,000, even $40,000. But now, let's talk about the extreme. There are extremely rare transitional and wrong planchet errors from 1966 that have stunned the collector world. Coins that look completely ordinary, worn, unimpressive, but once authenticated, they've sold for $75,000, $150,000, even pushing beyond $400,000 in high-end auctions. And here's the emotional part. Think about how many coins just like this have already been spent, ignored, or lost over the years. How many people held a small fortune in their hands and never knew it? That's what makes this hunt so powerful. It's not just about coins. It's about discovery. It's about looking closer when everyone else looks away. And now you've seen all 7 coins, from sharp extra fine examples to worn out pieces hiding unbelievable secrets. Every single one carries the same message. Value isn't always obvious. Sometimes, it's hidden in the smallest detail, the faintest color, or even the most worn surface. So before you spend another quarter, take one last look, because your next coin might not just be change. It might be a life-changing discovery. And if this opened your eyes even a little bit, make sure you subscribe to us Mint Mysteries, because we're just getting started uncovering what's really hiding in your pocket.